This conference will now be recorded.
All right, we will call the meeting to order at 3:31. Roll call. Susie's not here.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
Randy Johnson,
Um,
he's technically,
he is, just so you guys know, Randy has resigned from the committee. So he will no longer be on the.
Leroy,
I think he said he wasn't gonna be able to make it.
Kyle Jadot
Here.
is here, Dale Schmitz. Here, Jessica Atkinson.
Here.
Annette Obinger
I'm here.
and Trustee Flukie.
Here.
All right, you're all set.
All right, so the only item we have on the agenda today, you guys, is to discuss and possible action on a trail clearing request presentation to the village board. In your packet, Randy had put together just something for us to start with, the draft number 1. So I don't know if that's good, start with that and kind of expand on that, or if there's anything that you want to change on that or add to that, or on that. So if anyone looked at that or has any comments on that, or if there's some other way that you would like to start looking at everything.
I mean, you guys get more of the stuff coming to you at the board, so I guess from your standpoint on it, what do they respond to better? Is it typically just having kind of the facts up front being bullet pointed, like this is our estimated cost, this is why, like doing that? Or do you start with more this is what we're hearing the people want, this is what we're seeing, and then these are the, like, what do you feel like is better?
I don't know, I haven't been on that long, so I don't know what really resonates best with them.
Yeah.
I think, because it's kind of a request coming from this committee, saying, kind of why we want to do it up front, like why we feel it's important and having people ask, and kind of like maybe the opening paragraph that Randy put together. And then, the specifics on where the bullet points, like, okay, what are we looking for? Like, we would like to see all the paved trails in the village cleared. Or we would like to see however many miles of trail cleared, which includes these. And then this is kind of the scope. So I think some of this is good the way it's laid out. It's just a matter, is there something that's really, I think is missing that needs to be added? And, what do you think about attachments? The information about winter exercise by, that's important. I think that's coming from a national publication that 99 walks. If that's important, the whole why there's more and more people walking during the winter and why it's important, if you want to include that with it. One thing, and Joel, I don't know, I didn't see this in the packet, but I think the survey of the communities, what they're doing and some of the costs we found with that probably is important to have on there, just so they have an idea. And I know Doug went and got a cost together as well. But I think having a local community survey would be good to have as an attachment.
Well, and there's specific items that you had on there, Joe, like snow plowing, ice control.
Yeah.
And then, is it important? And then I guess what surprised me is a lot of the things that we want seem to be important, even though you only had 137 people respond. Because I'm looking at this, I have to go back to the, oh shoot, I don't have it. I didn't bring it along.
It's in
The actual survey.
Is it in there?
Yeah, it's in here.
One thing I noticed, and I noticed this when the survey initially came out, what people think is very important or important, about 85 to 86% of the people said availability of sidewalks and walking paths is very important. And when they asked, how do you think the village is doing, 35% are either exceptional, very good in that area. So people want it and we're not doing it.
Right. Yeah.
So, another thing, and maybe this is something that you've addressed a lot before, but as the demographics change, the expectations of people have changed. when I was young and growing up and kids, and, it was pretty centered around vehicle transportation. And that has changed now, and I think that expectation has changed.
Yeah.
And, we built these paths with the understanding we weren't gonna maintain them in the winter. And when those paths were built, that was probably an appropriate decision.
Yeah.
But as things change, we have to change too.
Right. Well, and I guess going on your whole survey thing, do we want to include some of the survey results? I mean, granted, there's not a lot of people that were surveyed, but there still was some. It still does, kind of talk about what their desire is. So if we would want to include some of that in our document, whether it's just some question or summary.
This was not the bike and ped survey. This is the village survey.
Yes, the village one, yep.
The village did it, the village put it out.
Yep.
We can't be responsible for a low number of participants.
Right.
They put the survey out. These are the results of the survey. And, from the respondents, that's what people want.
Yeah.
And that's what we're not doing.
Okay.
I think, I'm sorry. I think the other important thing to remember, if you scroll down, the people who answered the survey the most, 44.44% was the highest, and those people were in the village more than 25 years. So we can't necessarily say that the young people want this. It's also a wide range. And if you've been in the village 25, you have to be at least 50 years old or so, I would guess. I think that's positive.
Yeah.
That's not, they're gonna say, oh, the young people want it, blah, blah, blah. According to this, according to who filled it out, the more than 25 years have got the most response. And they're the ones that like the trails.
So it's both that really are wanting it.
Yeah, so it's the established long-term residents as well as
Right.
the new young.
Yeah.
Good point in that.
I think too, with like what the village is trying to attract going forward, we're having more and more apartments coming in, we're having more condo style living coming in. And I guess to me, that just kind of goes with that too, is the amenity of this form of transportation.
Yeah.
You're walking, having that availability for that.
Yeah.
Obviously, if all of the people that are gonna be moving into all these complexes, we're gonna all have cars and all be driving, then we would have a whole another set of issues. We would need to
Exactly. Yeah,
But,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Lots more apartments coming in.
So as you get to know me a little bit better, you'll know that I tend to play devil's advocate and throw a bunch of different thoughts out on the table, primarily just to generate thought for the group and develop an argument for or against a certain point of view. As it relates to the community survey, I think you're right. Obviously, the community put it out there. It was intended to be more of a temperature check more than anything else. We made that very well clear at the onset that it was not a scientific survey. So be prepared, of course, that, hey, we don't have enough people that have responded, so these results are invalid.
Yeah.
That was not the intent of the survey per se, to create a scientific valid response rate, but it is a temperature check. And I think it does provide enough input to suggest that there is a sentiment, right? Can we say definitively? No. But there's a sentiment. And I've been in enough communities that have gone out and they've paid buku dollars to have a scientific survey done through St. Norbert's or UW Oshkosh. And it always comes back, well, you only asked 400 people, you didn't ask me, so therefore the survey is invalid.
Yep.
Even though scientifically it meets the threshold of plus or minus percentage. So I always tell people, be careful using survey data because that old adage of figures lie and liars figure kind of thing, and it's all a matter of how you look at it versus how it's being received.
I think we can say too, we watched this year too through the winter and like how many of the trail had like footprints through them and people are utilizing them even with them not being maintained at this point. And I think just even having those observations, it's not like this has just been talked about this year. This has been talked about for multiple years, what gets maintained, what doesn't. And I think we're seeing more and more use of it even when it's not being maintained. So again, even that shows that there is obviously a demand for it because it's already happening even when they're not being maintained. So
I live near Sherwood Forest Parkway, and I walk through there pretty often. And I made a conscious attempt to look at this. I don't think there's been a time this year that I've been in that park and haven't seen someone else. And you talked about the footprints.
And we know their kids.
People are walking and on places that aren't paths. They're making paths there.
Yeah.
They're making paths to the woods.
Yeah.
So that's being used an awful lot, and it hasn't been plowed, and we're not asking it to be plowed.
Yeah.
But that just points out the fact that people want to walk, they want to get out in the winter.
Yeah.
You know, and to say that, just to go back to another point, this is not a scientific survey. I was in the bike hub in De Pere. I need some parts to repair my bike. They have almost no bikes in the store. You know, or if you go to any bike shop, you don't have bikes. And people aren't buying these bikes to put in their garage, they're buying to ride.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic obviously pushed forth or the desire to walk a bike that people maybe didn't have time for, didn't want to do it or try it, and it just went nuts. So that is definitely a given that it has gone, more popular. But I think your point too, it's always been there that people are going to go on the trails, whether they're paved or they're cleared or not, they're going to use them. The number of footprints you see out there is just tells you that is something that people want to do. And I think it's even more pronounced with the pandemic change and more people want to be out there. So
I think it just kind of goes back to that big question of like, what do we want to be as a village and like, what is our stance on it? I think, same thing with the sidewalks and how all that went, but like, I think we just constantly give a very mixed message as to what is important to us as a village. And I think to me, one thing, again, not scientific, but even reading through the comments and that, it is a very common thing to hear though, is the village's priority, their residents or their businesses. And I think this is a prime example of an opportunity for the village to show that the residents and what their wants are as important as the businesses, that this is us investing in the residents of it. And I think that, it's kind of just comes from that stance of it. It's just really what is important to us as a village. And I think with all the growth and all the things that are going on that is so good, this is what needs to go with it. It can't just be, we're going to just keep pushing people into this area and just hope. I mean, we need to have those same amenities as the other counties around us. And
one thing, we just did a strategic plan. And part of the strategic plan does have multimodal. That's one of the things the village board has agreed on, that they want to make our community more multimodal. So that is something that just occurred. And I know we're talking about it at village board on tomorrow, Tuesday, but they've already agreed to that. The village board and staff sat down for, what have you meet, 4 or 5 times, Joel?
4 times, yeah. They're still kind of formulating the final result of it, but
Yeah.
that's a major important.
But that was something that the village board and staff as a whole thought was important. So, maybe the survey, okay, it's not scientifically valid because it's so small, but the village board is working on a strategic plan. One of the things that was important to them that came out of our workshop is multimodal. And that could be part of this too. We've already kind of put that forward. Village board has already said that's important, through the strategic plan. This is a way to help us move forward in the desire to be more multimodal.
And even though it's not scientific, I'm going back to what was said to us in the survey that was said. It's talked about taxes and how you're going to pay it. The highest percentage, 61.19%, said use a combination of increased property taxes and user fees, changes and assessments. So they're not afraid to spend money. So we can use that also. They would not be afraid to spend money on clearing the trails because 61, even if it's small, 61.19% is a high percentage.
Yeah.
And then, I am talking again, the other thing I would not tell them, but just keep in case they ask, is when Joel gave us the list of other communities and what they do for their sidewalks. If they ask, we've got it, but I wouldn't recommend telling them that because a lot of, some of them have to clear their sidewalks by themselves, but, we certainly have the information.
Yeah, I think that would be good to include that information. And Joel, I was kind of looking for mine and I my
Yeah,
guide that I know you
I
put.
know that was on our list. I
Yeah.
do have it. It's-
Yeah, I know we had seen it and you had put it all together, so that might be another.
I
Okay,
think
so,
you sent it to us, Joel, too. I'm not sure, but you may have.
Yeah, I did early on.
yeah, I think Joel put that together early on, Annette. So it sounds like we want to talk about survey results in this, kind of say this is what came out of the survey. What do you think about the strategic plan, alluding, kind of talking about that a little bit, that the village board is working on it, and part of their, what they'd like to do is the multimodal. And then the other communities can catch that to it, so we have a feel for what other communities are doing, so don't think that we're just out there doing something else. The other thing I was thinking of, Joel, and I know you put the cost together for this, but we're talking about 10.3 miles total, and you have it in your packet here what that encompasses for trails. It's basically Ashwaubenon River Trail, Tackerland, West Main Avenue Trail, Industrial Park, Sand Acres, Wabi, Argonne, and that's what would include. We now have the new trail at the Highland Ridge States. That should probably be included. If we're going to talk about trails, that's another one that we should probably include and figure out how many miles that is and put that one in there, because otherwise, again, trail put in that won't be usable.
I think what we could do is just identify, if it's 2,500 or 2,700 per mile, that we could just include that. Highland Ridge will be kind of done incrementally, so we won't have the full length to start, but we'll have, let's say, 1,000 feet.
Okay.
And then we'll have another 1,000 feet, and then we'll have another 1,000 feet, depending on how things progress or develop.
Okay.
It could be some time before any one of those three phases develop.
Okay,
So a little caution there with the way things are going. Housing is still flying off the shelves really quickly, but the availability and the price of materials is really putting a damper on construction right now. So I have a feeling that it will slow considerably for that. But then the other one is the Main Avenue Trail. There is a section of trail that we are planning to construct yet this year for Main Avenue.
the piece, yeah.
So I was thinking, we could identify those in your presentation, so I can give you those links when they come online and when we begin to maintain them, obviously increase the total cost.
Okay. Well, and then the other thing I was wondering, you guys came up with a price of about 2,500 to 3,000 per mile. And my question is, some of the trails are very similar to the Black Sugar Trail. Like the Ashwaubenon River Trail would be very similar. There's not a lot of crossings. It's just along the river. Wabi Lane, no, Industrial Park. That's another one very similar to the Black Sugar Trail. And I don't know, the 2,500 to 3,000, if that, I know we talked about that being because we'd have to, Packerland, for instance, you might have to redo it 2 or 3 times because of the location to the road. Do you think there's any value or there would be any savings with some of the other trails that maybe aren't gonna take as much maintenance because of where they're located? Or do you think we're better off just saying it's gonna be 25 to 3,000?
Without knowing how the contract plays out, I guess I tend to lay on the conservative side and go on the heavier cost side. And if you come in under that, you're
That much better. Okay,
I hate to go in there and say, well, that one's gonna be $1,000 per mile.
right.
And then it ends up 2,000.
Right.
Yeah, I think it could squash the program earlier than intended.
Okay,
So that was my thought. If you stick to closer to that 2,500 or 2,700 a mile, I think that's a fair average based on the type of trail it is.
Okay.
Recognizing Packerland is probably going to be much higher, and then the industrial park is going to be much lower.
and then are we gonna
There's
talk
going to be
about
parts of Packerland too that just are easier than
the
others.
southern part of Packerland will be easy because we got a pretty good median between the two, so I think that one will be pretty easy too. But the northern part, where all those crossings are, commercial area, they're more difficult, I think.
So this 2,500 to 3,000 per mile for the year,
Correct.
for the winter.
Wasn't there a price difference too, based on the timing of how long after it was gonna be cleared? 'Cause we, I know you can't add that in there, but the 48 hours or 72 hours, stuff like that. So I think even though I agree, definitely the conservative is the right way to go, but I think we can say that to the village board too, that we're doing this, saying this is conservatively, knowing that there's areas we can look at to cut costs if needed by working with the contractors on the time frame that we're willing to do.
You could do other things too. In other communities, we've certainly based on the timing. So if it's 72 hours after the snow event, that potentially could save some dollars. I don't know that we necessarily came up with a hard number on that, so it's kind of anecdotal at this
Yeah.
point. With that being said, you can also tailor it. So if it's less than 2 inches of snow, let's say it's a dusting, we might not go out.
We don't go out.
Yep, yeah.
And especially in the early or later parts of the snow season, you might not because there's enough radiant heat from the sun to melt that.
Yep.
I think those are the points to make to the board, as you're
Okay.
saying it to.
Yeah, I think it would help if they understand we're trying to keep the cost minimal.
Right.
You know, we're not asking them to just give us a blank check.
Right.
You know, we understand cost and we're sensitive to that, but this is something that we feel is of value to the community.
So would you get specific on the survey questions that were used or not?
I was just gonna ask you, if we use
Generalize it.
if we use the survey questions, there's some in there that are really good, that really relate right to what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's
And there's,
too specific.
yeah, and there's some that really don't at all. So are we just gonna take out the ones that are more specific to what we're talking about?
I would think we want to use the ones that are related
Right.
Yeah.
to what we're trying to achieve.
Otherwise it just gets lost in it.
Yeah, because
There's too much.
I'm assuming they
Mhm.
reviewed this survey by now.
They've been given the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
Assuming.
okay, yeah.
So which are the three, Dale, which are the three you think,
So
The
if you
ones
go
that
on
hit the
page
most.
6,
okay?
you've got one, I'm gonna say it's approximately 2/3 down, snow plowing and ice control, sidewalks and trails.
Wait a minute. Page 6, fine. So, got it, okay.
All right, and then just below it, availability of sidewalks and walking paths.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't talk about snow, but obviously they like their sidewalks and their walking paths.
Yep.
If you look at very important.
Yep.
And the very last one would be the second last one, availability of bike lanes and bike paths. So, and then to go along with that, on page 10 is where they talk about exceptional, very good.
Yep.
And about 1/3 of the way down, there's snow plowing and ice control roads, right after leaf pickup and, all right, and then go down about 2/3, availability of bike lanes and bike paths after protecting our natural environment and pedestrian bike
Snow
safety.
plow and ice control for sidewalks and trails.
Yep.
And even a pedestrian and bicycle safety too really relates to it.
Yeah, that's true. But right above that is the availability of bike lanes and bike paths. And then just a little bit below that is snow plowing and ice control, sidewalks and trails.
Yeah.
And then availability of sidewalks and walking paths. Well, that's strange. How did they miss? Because if there's 4 in here, then there's got to be 4 in here. What did they miss on page 6?
So we didn't talk about snow plowing on roads.
Yeah.
On page 6.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, we don't. Yeah. Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want that. Yeah, sorry.
2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, just go down to about 2/3 where you got the bike lanes, availability of bike lanes and bike paths, snow plowing and ice control, and then availability of sidewalks and paths. And then if you want the bicycle safety, that's fine.
Any other ones that are more specific?
I read them and I didn't see anything, but I could have missed it, so it didn't hurt for us to just go, if you want to go through them quick and see if we see something.
I mean, there's comments, there are some comments in regard to it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
No,
Just
just
shady and there are a few
Yeah.
things in there.
Yeah. shady is, I can see that point there.
Mhm.
That's- I don't get over that way because I don't live there, but I can see that being a problem, just with the bill coming down and stuff.
Yeah, people come down and although I haven't seen them lately, there are times where public safety is sitting like on the trail, there's a little bump out to the trailhead. They sit there and they catch people coming out.
That's good. So yeah, so I don't know if we want to pull, I can just look, we can just grab some of this comments that came up, more specific comments. Just to throw out there too, if we wanted to, because there are some that really hit it right on. And really, I did not do the survey either, Joel. Neither did
Did you
Peter.
complete it?
No, I read it all, but I never got a chance to do it on the website. I was gonna go do it myself, I'm like, shoot. So some of the comments in here that would maybe come from me, really were not me. Those guys are
Number
great.
27, maintain the trails and parks that are in place now before adding additional ones.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes to
Yep.
taking care of in the winter. As far as using these comments, I guess I would, maybe as Annette said, just keep them in your back pocket. And
Okay.
you can pull them out and say, well, here's a comment from somebody in the village and they like this. And,
Yep.
It's a comment of just one person, so I wouldn't necessarily lead with that.
Right.
But I would have that in reserve just to, to make a point of argument or, make a point of information.
Yeah.
Number 36 is sort of, fits us. It says something about, they lived in 4 different states, and I think it would benefit from an attractive downtown development with walkability. That's number 36.
Yep. Okay, so we're gonna use some of the survey results. Do you guys like the kind of the opening paragraph that Randy put together? Is there anything missing from that we would want to do something? Add anything to it or anything different? And, do you like the layout, like this is what our request is, this is what the scope is, cost, frequency. I think we need to take out that, if nothing else, that second sentence and frequency, just because this provides a percentage, because we have no idea what the percentage savings would be, unless, Joel, you don't really have anything that you. So. Reason for the request, the attachments, the map. I think the map is a good thing to have, and they can see exactly the areas we're talking about. The communities that we surveyed, that would be good to have.
Only if they have a lot of clearing of their sidewalks. If they don't, then it would not be good. I don't remember.
I think we asked specifically about trails, didn't we, Joe? When you talked, it was specifically trails, and I thought quite a few did it, didn't they, Joe? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah. I know Green Bay does.
I'm just gonna pull it up here. So
Howard does.
We didn't have Howard in that survey.
Oh, we did.
I know we didn't.
I don't know, I don't know how much time we get to speak to them. Because
Yeah.
there's some in-depth time, because your board meetings can get long. If
Right.
They're gonna give you
Yeah.
a half hour to talk
Right.
about
No.
like that.
Yeah.
There's actually articles in, what's it called? Advocacy Advance, how Madison, and they're close by, right? So the only reason I'd use that one is to say, from a budget perspective, we treat our bicycling infrastructure no different than other infrastructure we have. It's part of their annual exercise.
Yeah.
They don't even think about the cost. If they build a new path, it's part of the cost of our community.
Yeah.
Period. And somehow, I don't want to say that. I want to get negative. What I want to figure out is how can we get them to understand that we feel that it should be part of our community. To your point, that in the future, or not even the future, right now, bicycling and walking, it's just what people do. I mean, we just babysat for Tyler's down in Wauwatosa. It's crazy. You don't, I mean, there's just, they got the huge park and everybody, they don't drive there.
Everybody
They walk
Yeah.
there. They got walking their dogs and it's their way of living,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, like the house that we just bought in Ashwaubenon a year and a half ago, like we weren't even necessarily in love with the house as it was. The backyard has like stuff in the backyard, and then we have trails that we go behind, but like there is not a lot of that in Ashwaubenon, and that was like okay, we're just gonna do this and figure it out because there's not a lot of opportunity for that. So I think it's just like a mindset change that, prior, again, it probably wasn't, some of these trails when they were put in, it wasn't necessarily at the time, it didn't need to be, where now it is different. It's a different mindset. It's, and going forward, like you said, it needs to all be kind of factored in all together. It can't just be like the afterthought of what do we do with it now. It should be part of it going forward too.
Tracy, this is a good example of that. Now, this is an area I can understand when maybe it's neglected, but this is on page 11 and it was one of the comments. It's number 2. And the start of it is they don't pick up their bulk pickup. They sometimes miss their street.
Yeah.
It's Parkville and Holmgren.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But in the end, you'll read where she's saying that we'd love to see bike lanes and sidewalks in this area so families can get out more safely.
Yeah.
So it's only one road, but she's telling you that it would be nice to be able to be mobile by walking or bicycling to where we want to go.
Yeah.
So I don't, somehow we have to get that in a lot less words.
Right.
And I can send everybody this link because this is actually, I think, believe it or not, it might be from 2014. But it actually talks about trails increase the values of nearby properties. But anyways, the gist of it is it's not just the bicycles and the trails. It creates job creation. It's local business sales. It's tourism. It's lodging. It's bringing those people that maybe it's from De Pere. Maybe it's from Howard. Maybe they want to come in, but they don't want to drive their car to get here.
Right.
They want to have a nice leisurely day and they want to get on their bike and go take a ride. Now, it takes more than Ashwaubenon to get them here, right?
Right.
But that's where it'd be nice to be part of the Brown County.
Yeah.
A big picture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the Fox River Trail or the Mountain Bay Trail. Those are huge economic drivers. And granted, they're long, they're a lot,
And even Howard going the other way, right?
Right.
Going west.
Yeah, I mean, they're both like really popular trails, especially Fox River Trail. So there is a value, there definitely is value to the community to have that and have the trails available for people.
But if we can tie up to them, that gives our people access to move out, but it also gives people access to move in.
Yeah.
We do have things they want to come here to see,
Yeah.
whether it's baseball games or.
We just had Joel and I, there's a group called Halo. Basically, it's Howard, Hobart, Lawrence, Ashwaubenon, Oneida, and we meet monthly. And we had 2 gentlemen from the chamber that came and presented, and they're doing a study right now, or they've done a study, and they're trying to get some information together to put out for people to relocate here into Ashwaubenon, or into the whole greater Brown County area, basically.
Sure.
And one of the things they talked about a lot was a lot of people now are choosing where they live. They're not going to be working there because they're working remotely. And we talked about, other things that, would be factors for them to look at Ashwaubenon, closely, or the Brown County area. And some of it was, what can they do in that community, whether it's walking, biking, recreational opportunities, programs, activities. And that's one of the drivers. And my comment to me was, people are moving here just for their job, and they're not going to be working in our community. Their social circle is pretty limited. So we really need to work on it as a community and Brown County as a whole to expand those social circles. So people can get help to get that social contact that they need. Not getting into their work as they're sitting at home, working on the computer, or having phone calls with people. So I think that's a factor in it too, to have these facilities available for people to walk and get out year round. It's gonna be huge, and they have a lot more flexibility to do it because if they're working out of home, they can call their neighbor and say, hey, let's go out for a walk at lunchtime, and out they go. Or they can take kids out for a walk, right after school or whatever. So I think it provides a lot more flexibility, and to have the availability for them to do that year round, I think would be huge.
Another thing, and I don't know anything about the people on the village board, but I mentioned you can't find bicycles. Well, apparently you can't find dogs either.
Yeah.
Because so many people during the pandemic, they're home, they have time to take care of pets. So they all have, so a lot of them have dogs. You know, my wife has nieces and nephews, they're in their 20s, and they all have dogs, and they have big dogs.
Yeah.
And big dogs need exercise. And when I go to Sherwood Forest, there's always people walking their dogs.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
where are you gonna walk them? You want them walking on the street, or you want them walking on a trail?
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe there are people on the village board who can relate to that. Maybe none of them have dogs. Maybe they don't like dogs. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too, because there are a lot more dogs that people have that they're out walking too, so.
But with your meeting with these other communities, so what I see when I travel to places, only because my son thinks he needs to live by the city, right? But a lot of people do today.
Yeah.
It's changed.
Yeah.
It's not the mall.
No,
They want the places that are building stores side by side, where they can walk in, walk back out, go do their little thing.
Yeah.
And they don't want to have to figure out where to park.
right, yeah. Yeah, they want to
That
just park
means-
their car or walk to where they want to go.
Yeah, not so much for our meeting, but if you
Right.
guys are getting together.
Yeah.
I really think that's, and we don't, if you think about it here, Green Bay's doing a little bit of it, right?
Yeah.
Because downtown and west side.
Yeah.
Right, which is drawing people.
Yeah.
But we really don't have that a lot here. They could do that on Ridge,
Mhm.
convert it,
Yeah,
put the skating there and
Yeah.
start cursing kids sell the houses because they're going to Airbnb the houses. So
Right,
they
yeah.
Sell the property.
Yeah.
But anyways, just a thought rather than all this, because there was a gentleman that wrote in here, I'm not sure where he came from, but he talked about infrastructure and how they took the property from Schneider
Oh, yeah.
and put apartments
yeah,
in.
instead of,
Yep.
yeah,
And rather than making it, and there are cities that won't do that. They'll say, well, kind of like you guys, they did the ballpark, perfect,
Mhm.
right? It's a community thing.
Yeah.
Now I realize the value of that property because it's like, it's riverfront property. I get that.
Yeah.
But there are people like that who are saying, hey, there's other villages and cities that take that property and they make it a place, a destination.
Yeah.
We got Ashwaubenon, which is kind
yeah.
of really kind of
Just-
nice.
Yeah,
Right, it's a nice piece of land there.
yeah,
Mhm.
oh, yeah,
But his point was taken,
right,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the fact they comment because there's some truth to that.
absolutely.
Yeah, when we come to planning around the lower waterfront, we had, the only thing our leaders can think of is apartments and condos.
Mhm. What number is that, Kyle? I'm
On
reading it.
page 19 of 20, and it's number 22.
Oh, got it, okay.
Yeah, because I think about, you probably know better, Joel, but I think about the tax base that's increasing in Ashwaubenon. Yet, I'm not sure that I see the heavy increase on cost of maintaining.
Yeah.
The streets were already there.
Mhm.
There's gonna be garbage pickup, stuff like that. But so there is a nice tax base coming in with what's going on in the village.
Does the village realize those taxes now, or are they part of like TIF districts or something where the revenue is down the road?
Yeah, most of it, of the heavy development or redevelopment that you've seen in the last 5 years are into TIF districts. So a lot of that gets reinvested back either into the development because they receive some type of tax credit or something to that effect, or there was infrastructure that went in, or there was the need to acquire or assemble properties and then raise structures and do environmental remediation to allow for the redevelopment.
Property, yeah, like Schneider.
Schneider,
Yeah. So like the Schneider one, right? So you had to acquire the property and there was some significant environmental remediation that had to occur as well. And that's why the property sat the way it did. So they're trying to find a developer that's going to generate enough increment or value to pay off the expense that it took to develop it. So that's,
Yeah, so there's some
so
offset.
you'll see it eventually. Now,
Yeah, I guess that's always what I assume.
yeah, you'll see it eventually. The challenge is, yes, Ashwaubenon is a little bit unique compared to like a very quickly growing urbanizing community like a Howard or a Hobart. They're putting in all new infrastructure. And so their high costs are on the infrastructure side. It'll catch up to them eventually. But where we're at, we're kind of mature that way. The infrastructure is really there. But when we start adding bodies, we're going to start adding residents and shoppers and workers, then those other ancillary services are burdened with the public safety in particular.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there's no money in local government. If there was a profit, that somebody would have figured that out by now and they would have gone into that profit motive. So
yeah.
it's always a struggle to try to
Well,
balance.
you base your rate on what your budget is,
Yeah,
right?
right.
There isn't supposed to be any extra, right?
Part of, there's a concept here about, trying to increase development opportunities to improve your tax base, or grow your tax base. And there's two issues to that. One, part of that desire to grow is kind of being pushed down to local units of government because of levy limits. So in order to grow your tax levy, you have to grow your value. And so there's this kind of negative unintended consequence to that. So you're always pushing for development to have a higher degree of net new construction, it's called. It's a valuation factor change is what it's called. And so there's always this drive because that's the only way you're going to increase your levy is by doing that. And then you get all that other demand for services that come with it, and then that costs more.
Yeah.
And the rate of growth never really achieves the rate of inflation. So if a community has 1.5% growth, that's exceptional because you're taking it based on the overall value. And so 1.5% on $2.5 billion isn't a whole lot of growth when you think about it. But then the annual cost of inflation is 3 or 4%. Now you're still in that same hole.
Behind, yep.
But there's other intrinsic value to it is the vitality of your community, right? A lot of this development that you're seeing, I think, was indicated in the survey too, that people have a really positive outlook for Ashwaubenon, that it's improving, that it's growing, that there's some vitality to it. There's life in the community. If we were just a bunch of ragtag old industrial buildings that were rusty and falling over, I think people would have a different outlook on their community. It's old, it's outdated, there's no vitality, there's no investment. So even though we may not necessarily gain tax value, we're gaining vitality and livelihood.
I just look at it and I look at, okay, so whether, except for like you're saying, the cost of redeveloping, if you will, but whatever that building was before now becomes an apartment building that's now up in the air, 8 stories or whatever, that tax, maybe not today, because you're right, there's cost, but that tax base is huge compared to what used to be there. And I think about even along the river, or more so along the bridge, right? And I look at those units there, and I look at the hotels, and I look and I say, well, the property was empty, yes, but the roads were always there. The infrastructure was always there, except for, like you're saying, when you got issues with, or you have to buy the property, which in a lot of cases you do, right? Even here over here, you have to buy the property before you can go and obtain somebody to want to build there. I get that. But I'm just saying, I think Ashwaubenon's in a good place, I believe in my mind, because of the way we are set up, because of having the state, because of having the rush. It's a draw to start with. So now you've got all these places that want to take care of people that come in.
Yeah,
No one visited.
No one should feel pity for us.
Yeah.
No,
We have a huge benefit.
Yeah, the only thing I see different is, and maybe it's because I don't get on my bike and travel here, but when I'm down there in Wauwatosa, we'll walk out of the house, and we'll walk our 2 blocks, and we go to a restaurant. Not when there's a ball game. It's probably once or twice a week for those people, or maybe more often. I mean, the other day, and they still got mask mandate, so you can't even go. But I mean, the places were packed. I walked into a Jimmy John's just to get the subs, and I had to wait a half hour to get my order at 5 o'clock at night. I'm like, it's crazy.
people want out. I mean, part of it's the COVID thing too, but yet when I see that, they weren't driving there. They'd be walking down the sidewalk, they walked in the door, they got their order, and they walked back to their house, wherever they were. That's kind of the stuff I don't, when I see what he paid for the house, I go, you're crazy, Don. I was telling my wife, you're crazy, I would have never done this. And then when I go there, he says, I kind of get it. Kind of get it, We're walking the dogs and we take them around and there's other people with their dogs biking, and it's just crazy. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
It's like a lifestyle.
My daughter and son-in-law live in Houston, and we go down to visit, we walk a couple blocks, have crepes for breakfast, or there's a trail that walks, I got on a bike and I rode about 5 miles to downtown. I was by Minute Maid Park, and the trail went right underneath the expressway, followed the right of way of the expressway, took me right downtown to Minute Maid Park, past the homeless encampment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like New Orleans.
Okay, so what else do we have, you guys, or what else do we want to, I don't think we want to do a ton of stuff, like tons of stuff they have to read, but I think bullet points and keeping it clear and concise is probably the best way to go. The attachments, the map is good. Everyone okay with catching the map? Everyone okay with lists of the communities and snow removal? Found with that. What about C? No one has made any comments on C. C is basically that information that Randy put in. It's from 99 Walks, late November of last year.
You might want to hand it to them. I don't know that I would have that discussion on it.
Yeah, I guess to me, let's just be pretty straightforward. Here's what we want, here's what we cost. Everybody knows that walking and exercise is good. I don't think anybody's gonna argue that point.
No, I think you're right.
As important as it is, I don't know that we need to include that.
Okay, so maybe just the fact that we're obviously asking for winter, clearing it in the winter, we don't have to include out, because you said everyone reading this is, oh, I get this, I understand that.
I think if anything, I do like the idea of adding that part that Dale, like we had, where it's saying, 'cause even the fact that it was done in 2014, showing that,
It's part of their,
that it's just part of their infrastructure, and that's how we believe the village should be looking at it too. I think that's more of a valid point than.
It's part of the whole transportation system. We would never not plow roads. We would hear it and the village would hear it and people would be irate that we didn't plow the roads that the cars are on. Why can't we treat our walkways, our places for our bikes pets the same way? That is part of the whole transportation system. They should be cleared and people should be able to get to them and walking and cross them safely, just like our cars can ride on our roads.
I'll send you this.
Oh, yeah, send me that. Okay, send that to them.
Because it's advocacy, this is a big deal. They have, but I couldn't get into it. Maybe they wanted me to sign in. But this 2014 came up because of my specific question, but this advocacy advance is a regular, they just had an April one. But when I tried to open it up, it wouldn't let me open it. So because I didn't have time, I didn't try to figure it out. But it's so it is how communities are paying to maintain trails, bike lanes, and sidewalks was this issue.
Okay. All right, so if you can send that, that would be great.
Yep.
At least pull some of that information out of it, not necessarily put the whole article, but include that in here. All right, so anything else that you guys think that we really are missing with this? We'll talk about the survey results briefly. Just kind of this is what we saw with the survey. We'll talk about the strategic plan briefly again. Like this is where the village board looks like they're moving towards. Anything else that we think that we really need to put in here that you're like, okay, we gotta include that?
I think it's important just to point out that attitudes and expectations have changed over 25 years.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think another thing that's changed is the amount of traffic that we have out there, the speed of the traffic out there, the
The number of cars.
The number of cars, yeah, that, not only has the attitudes changed, but there's bigger cars, they're going faster, they're not paying attention, there's cell phones, there's all that stuff. So things have really changed. than when a lot of these roads were built.
Yeah.
You know, someone walking alongside the road might have been a lot safer
Mhm.
in the 80s.
There were a lot fewer
Yeah.
F-350s or whatever, big pickup trucks that
Yeah,
extended cab and
Just thinking about that, I don't know if that might be too specific too, but we talked about the new areas by Highland. Right?
Highland Ridge, by Sand Acres area.
Where are they gonna walk?
Mhm.
If they don't clear the path.
Right.
They're gonna have to go out to, what's the main road?
Sand Acres.
Sand Acres
Mhm.
and walk on a road.
Mhm.
And that road, I'll walk on my road, and ours is
Yeah.
pretty busy, because I said like Pioneer School, and that's because I walk at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's car after car, but they're careful and I'm careful.
Yeah.
But that
Sand
road there
Acres,
is, the speed's a lot higher too.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's just a straight shot.
yeah, I thought about that. It's just those people, they're either gonna have to walk just in their area, or they're gonna have to cross
And
and
then
walk in the other community in what, Sand Acres
Yeah.
subdivision.
Yeah, and to get there, they have to walk on the road because they don't clear the path.
Yep.
So,
Yep,
on your.
And it's 100 and some units of more tax base.
Right.
Now, I realize there is infrastructure and we do have costs there, plowing roads and what have you. But something tells me that taxes will.
pay the snowplow,
Well, to Joel's point, here's your budget, now what's your tax?
Yeah.
What's your mill rate, what's your,
And what's important when you want to do with that money that you're getting.
yeah.
You know, that's the thing, there's always a million different things that are very important.
Yeah, so I had talked about this last time, and I don't know, because I'm not sure how that even works. If you start talking about, the pool obviously is maintained by the village. And there are fees, you buy a pass, so there's some support to that. Performing arts, are they self-sufficient, or do we?
You know, Joe, I don't know if that.
I really honestly probably couldn't tell you, because
Okay.
since I've been here, it's been COVID, so everything's closed.
And would they be, maybe their performing arts is probably even separate from schools? Maybe, even though it's part of it?
It's tied to the school district.
Okay.
I'm not sure how they're.
Because I know I've gone online and they actually, obviously, they ask for donations and support. So maybe they're self-sufficient
I would
based on the
suspect
shows and the.
operationally they are, but obviously there was an investment of public taxpayer dollars to build.
Right.
this facility, So, and the bond payment has to be paid off over time.
And even our community center.
Yeah.
We did that for the people. I mean,
Right.
that's
Yeah,
why
that's-
people voted it in.
Yeah.
So we have other things that cost tax dollars.
Yeah.
Just had a couple school referendums.
Yeah.
Passed those, we didn't pass the big one.
Yeah.
So people are willing.
Yeah, for the good of the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, people will be
And
able to
if
do
you look at it, there's probably a lot of people like me and you, I'm probably older, but either way, that it doesn't, I don't have any kids in the school, but it doesn't make any difference. It's my community, and my kids are in this school.
Exactly. They have.
So these kids that are at school now deserve the same
Yes.
good education and quality education that my kids got. And I think there's a lot of people that believe in that.
Yeah.
because it is all a benefit to the community, good schools,
Absolutely.
good roads.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
Parks.
nice parks.
Good people.
Yeah.
I prefer to be able to walk down my street.
Yeah, yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, not to worry. that it's
Yeah.
done. Yeah. Yeah. It is, it's getting, I mean, it's getting fast up there, you know, and people drive really fast and they're not paying attention, so to have a separate, and I realize that people can get picked up on trails anyway. I mean, one in the valley, they had some people walking on the trail, police up the trail, and the car went off the road and ended up killing the woman. She was on a trail, you know,
Yeah,
long distance, so it does happen, but
wrong place.
it is, right, exactly, it does add some safety when people are over the motor vehicles. So, and to have it year round is a huge deal to do. I mean, when I was out campaigning, that was something, and I did not say anything to anybody to push them one way or the other, because that's kind of my thing. They would say that to me, that they, you know, were runners or bikers, and they would keep trails open year round. And where I live, there's a lot of them that are really close. You have the Lobby Lane Trail, you have the Industrial Park, you have Peckerman. So there are a lot of trails that are really close, and none of them are open in the winter. And that really takes out Wabi Lane. You cannot use that for bikes or pets in the winter months because especially as a runner or walker, if you're on that road walking, you literally can't get out of the way because snowbanks are this high. You have to jump up over the snowbank to get out of the way. So Wabi is just gone. Packerland, same thing. I mean, when that trail's not open, it's gone for bikes and pets. You just
Yeah, I don't
can't.
think you'd catch me running on Wabi.
I haven't. It's not a good idea.
I don't have trails near me, but I live on Cormier Road and there's a safe routes to school sidewalk plowed and there's people always walking. It's so busy.
Yeah.
So the people,
You've seen it.
yeah, people want to get out and walk and they walk their dogs and push their kids in strollers and
Only is used.
use skateboards.
Yeah. All that good stuff.
Let's see if it has paint.
And
Do that. All right, anything else? Otherwise, what, the June, we were gonna go to the June village board meeting, but the sidewalks are going, where the village board, Aaron is going to put a sidewalk ordinance. He's gonna look at a sidewalk ordinance to take to village board after the last subdivision that we looked at. To see what the village board wants to do with sidewalks for new subdivisions. Then depending on where they fall on that, it potentially would come back to bike pet, is that correct, Joel?
Correct.
And then we could, weigh in on it or get involved in it at that time. So we're thinking, and I'm actually not gonna make the June meeting, we could push this out to the July meeting, because putting sidewalks and the clearing of the trails at the same meeting is probably not the best idea, to tie kind of those two together and kind of hit it hard.
Yeah,
at
yeah,
one
I
time.
think so.
And I know Kyle, I think you couldn't make,
Yeah,
you couldn't make the June meeting, is that right, Dale? One of you.
Well, I'm on edge right now
Okay.
because it's, a commitment, but
Okay. So if we push it to the July meeting, does that work for people? It would be July 27th would be
when's your budget though? That was an issue.
well, that was asked Joel about that.
Yeah, we'll basically have kind of a kickoff conversation with the board at that same meeting in July for the budget.
So we won't miss the budget.
No. We'll be talking at a real high level that meeting, just kind of what are your goals and objectives. So I think this will probably lend itself well to that conversation. So
Since
Joel,
July
department comes in and says, Joel, I need
yeah,
Well,
$1 million.
the idea is to have the board say, okay, levy's really important to us. We don't want to raise the levy at all next year. Or rate is really important to us. Make your budget work to fit the rate. Or sidewalks and trails are really important to us. We want to make sure we include X number of dollars for that. Then we kind of know at a high level what we're working from. And then we go back to the department heads and say, hey, the board has got a zero-based budget viewpoint, so your budgets need to come in flat from last year.
One other thing I wanted to add in there, because actually if I could redo it, I'd have to take my trees out, but the trees that they put in your terraced area, you have to maintain those.
Right.
We do that, I'm sure dual purpose, because trees are good for the environment,
Right.
but also for aesthetics.
Yeah.
It costs money because those guys are running around every year having to trim those trees. They trimmed ours this year.
And it actually slows traffic down.
Yeah,
Because when you have more things close to the road or more, things that people are looking at, it slows them down because they gotta see more. So having trees close to the road is really something.
it's just one other thing that we have, that there is a cost factor to maintain them.
Right, absolutely.
And that's for beautification, but what's more important, health or
function.
beautification?
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
well, they cut down all the ash trees they planted on Cormier Road.
yeah.
Yeah, what a shame.
Isn't that sad?
They could cut these down, I'd be happy. They got the little green seeds. They're on there all year, sometimes still in winter, and they literally cover your driveway. It's just,
What kind of tree is it? Is it ginkgo or something?
what is it?
Is it a ginkgo?
I don't know, I'd have to, and it's not a maple, it's just some, they make, they're short trees, and we, if we'd have known it, they wouldn't be there. There's no way, they are just a mess. But anyways, you wouldn't plant, you wouldn't park them by your driveway, right? But it looks beautiful when you're driving down the street, but well, what tree isn't messing with?
Yeah, that's very true. There's a
Anyways.
lot of value.
Enough complaints.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe what I will do, or I'll take what Randy put together. I'll schmooze it a little bit of what we talked about today, something else together and get it back out to everybody. Or we could discuss it at our June meeting. Our June meeting is gonna be we're gonna drive, we're doing our tour. So maybe what I'll do, can I get it out to everybody to look at prior to the meeting? Would that be okay? Okay, I'll get it out to everybody, take a look at it, see if I totally missed something, reword, whatever. And then we'll look at, and then we'll get it finalized for the July meeting. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
All right. All right, Annette, anything else on your end?
No. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes. We just can't see you.
Okay. The sound went from one place to another. I don't know what I'm doing, but anyway.
That's okay. We got all your input then, so that is great. So we'll do that and then I'll get that out to you guys and take a look at it.
One thing I would just add, Tracy, just a food for thought
Yep.
in this conversation is sometimes individuals get mixed up when we talk trails versus sidewalks. You know, there's something that could be lost in translation, which could get people confused. The committee is really focused on the trails or side paths that abut right of way or provide some connection between trails. As an example, the industrial park trail is really kind of that connecting trail, if you will. It's not, although these can be used and are used certainly for recreation, we're not planning to maintain in the winter months the trails that are in the park systems.
Correct.
And I think that's an
Make that really
important
clear,
thing
okay.
to the group to let them know that this is an all value proposition, meaning it's for recreation, of course, health, recreation, but it's also about safety and mobility. And that's the key thing. And don't get confused. The exception would be the Ashwaubenon Trail, I'm guessing, that you'd still be planning to maintain that along the river. But that would be the exception to the rule, that you wouldn't necessarily go into like Sherwood Forest, for example, and maintain those trails. Or the Crusher Dust Trail by Sand Acres Park, and we won't maintain that, but we will on the road, right?
Yeah. I mean, really, it's, the way I would look at it or describe it, it's paved trails that are along corridors of some kind. They're not all within a park, or they're definitely not Crusher Dust trails. They would be paved and there's something that moves through a corridor and moves between.
Well, is the map specific as to which trails we're talking about?
I think it kind of does. I mean,
I think we would just have to identify further.
yeah.
No, I agree, but to point to let them know that the map should indicate exactly.
Yeah,
Along with
I could
explaining.
have Francine highlight the trails.
Yeah.
That are green, that would be picked up by the proposal.
Yeah.
Just so that they understand that it's not, we're not necessarily going into individual park sites.
Yeah.
Because when we point out, like you're saying, we could say, you'll be able to see on the map that we're not talking about paths that are in the parks.
I mean, maybe Francine, a clear map would be just showing the trails that we're talking about on it. I mean, I'm sure she could take layers away and do it that way. I mean, we could do this full one with everything on it because it kind of shows you, oh, this is what's really going
Yeah,
on.
I kind of like keeping it on there so that
Okay.
you can see the connectivity between the two systems.
Okay.
So I do have my key, yes, thank you. If they're locking the doors, they want to make sure I can get in, but I got Jeremy here, so.
Okay, so yeah, maybe if you could talk to Francine and see if she could do it some way so it's very clear which ones we're talking about. Trails.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay. All right. Good call. Anything else, Joel, on your end that you can think of that?
That was it.
All right, last call for everybody else. Anything else that you think we really need to hit on?
Well, I'd just be curious from Joel, from your perspective, you know, from your experience, I guess, with looking at other. Is this real typical that the committee goes in front of the board to request rather than just submitting a request? I mean, is that, I guess my question is, it seems like you shouldn't have to do this, but I'm okay with it. I'm just asking, in your past experience when you've worked with cities or villages, is a committee that's part of the village normally go to the board for their request for something like this to make them more aware of it rather than, or
or to create more emotion? I'm not sure what the advantage.
Kind of a mix. It's
Is
a
it?
little bit of a mix, I think, in my experience, so.
Rather than just reading it, explaining it probably does a better job. And just allowing them to read, hey, here's a request from the bicycle and pedestrian.
What I found in smaller communities like in Ashwaubenon is the more personal you can make it, like having that face-to-face contact, the more success you have. Bigger cities, they tend to have other issues they gotta deal with, bigger issues, if you will.
Bigger fish.
And so
Yeah,
they want to expedite things and they just want a written report and that's it. Kind of thing. It's rather impersonal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd say in Ashwaubenon, I think this probably is.
Okay.
Well, and we've had, like, when I was here, we had the Parks Committee, we would have park members come, especially on big things, like when we were redoing Ashwaubenon Park and building a sports complex, Park Committee members went to Village Board fairly regularly to explain why they were going, why were they recommending the way they were. You know, it may not be the whole committee, maybe there are 2 or 3 people that showed up from the committee just to explain to them. So I think when there's more major things, and this is more major, this is a philosophical change for the board.
Yeah.
And there's a cost to it.
And there's a cost, yeah.
So I
Right.
think having, some of the, and the whole committee doesn't have to be there, and if we have, 3, 4, 5, whatever, come, that's great. And I think they would be like, why are you here kind of thing. I think it's fine because that's your niche. That's what you guys are really charged with looking at. And, you are a full-blown committee of the village now, so I think it's appropriate. This happened in the past, obviously it was years ago when I was here, but I'm sure it has.
Okay.
All right, if there's nothing else, I would welcome a motion to adjourn, and I would thank you all for coming and spending.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
It's 4:30, all those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Ness. Motion carried.
I don't think she meant